So, when you hear the name Babylon, what pops into your head? Towering walls, golden temples? Maybe a garden hanging impossibly in the middle of the desert sky? For thousands of years, that name alone has been a symbol of power, of mystery, and just wonder. But what if the story we all think we know is, well, just that, a story? In this explainer, we're going to peel back all those layers of legend to try and find the truth about one of history's most famous cities. And you might be surprised by what we find, and maybe more importantly, what we don't. All right, so to really understand the myth of Babylon, we first have to get a handle on the reality. This wasn't some city that was born a superpower. Nope. It grew into one, and eventually it became the absolute cultural and political heart of ancient Mesopotamia. Yeah, Babylon's journey was a long one. I mean, it started out as a pretty minor city before the famous king Hammurabi really put it on the map. Then, centuries later, under rulers like Nebuchadnezzar II, it hit its absolute peak, becoming the undisputed center of this vast empire. And it's actually with Hammurabi that we find our first real crack in the legend. His name is totally synonymous with law and order, all thanks to his famous code. But was it what we've always been told it was? Let's see. The code is just famous for its if-then structure, which laid out these really specific and often super harsh consequences. For example, law number 1 says if you accuse someone of murder and can't prove it, you're the one who gets killed. Another one details that a slave who denies his master will have his ear cut off. Pretty intense stuff. And this brings us to our first big myth-busting moment. For the longest time, everyone thought the Code of Hammurabi was the oldest in the world. But archaeologists have since discovered even earlier law collections, like the Code of Ur-Nammu, which predates it by centuries. So, that leads to a huge question, right? We have evidence that suggests judges in Old Babylonia didn't really consult the code when they were making their rulings. So if it wasn't the first, and it wasn't used like a modern law book, what on earth was it for? Well, scholars have a few different theories floating around. Instead of a strict legal code, it might have been more of a law report, a collection of past cases to serve as examples. Or maybe it was a work of jurisprudence, a sort of theoretical text outlining the king's vision of perfect justice, not a handbook for his courts to use every day. Okay, so from one Babylonian legend to another, let's turn to the Hanging Gardens. This is maybe the most famous image we have associated with the ancient city. But here's the central problem. For all their fame, we have zero conclusive proof of where the gardens actually were. It's the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that we just can't pin to a specific location. It's a ghost. So, the case for the gardens. It rests almost entirely on these really vivid descriptions from Greek and Roman writers. The problem? Well, they wrote these accounts centuries after the gardens supposedly existed, and none of them had ever actually seen them. And while archaeologists have found some intriguing things, like a big vaulted building with a well, there's no definitive proof. The evidence against them being in Babylon, though, it's powerful. There are no Babylonian texts, not a single one, that even mention them. King Nebuchadnezzar II, the guy who supposedly built them, was a meticulous record keeper of his grand projects, yet he never wrote a single word about a massive terraced garden. That kind of silence, it's deafening. So, if Babylon's most famous legends are built on some pretty shaky ground, what about the story of its fall? As we're about to see, even this very real event is wrapped in its own layer of myth. In 539 BCE, the end came, and it came fast. The rising Persian Empire, led by the absolutely formidable Cyrus the Great, arrived at the gates of Babylonia. The empire that had dominated the region for nearly a century was on the brink of total collapse. But, you guessed it, just like everything else with Babylon, even its fall is shrouded in conflicting stories. The official Persian account, the Cyrus Cylinder, it claims the city was taken peacefully, without battle. But then you have Greek historians like Herodotus who tell a much more exciting tale of a surprise attack during a great big feast. 2 completely different versions of one historic night. The city fell. Its walls crumbled into dust. But the idea of Babylon, that was just getting started. Its ghost would go on to have a way bigger impact on the world than the physical city ever did. What's so wild is that Babylon totally transformed from, a place on a map into this incredibly powerful symbol.
In texts like the Bible, Babylon came to represent pretty much any great civilization that was grappling with its own power and its relationship with the divine.
And what did it symbolize? Well, all sorts of things. It stood for overwhelming pride, that desire to build a tower straight to the heavens. It represented rebellion against the established order. It captured that deep anxiety of a world without divine guidance, and the use of materialism and luxury to distract from life's bigger questions.
And this leaves us with a final, really fascinating question. The physical city of Babylon, it's now dust and ruins, but the legend of Babylon, the symbol of human ambition, pride, and its ultimate decline, that is still very much with us. So you really have to wonder, which one has truly had the more lasting impact on history? The city of bricks or the city of ideas?